Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
I will sing to the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown.
Oh, they got you wired. Make you turn it on.
I get a look every once in a while. Say the mic not on. Good evening, everybody. Oh man, oh man, oh man. As we wrap up the book of Joshua, I was told to go backwards a little bit. They said we didn't talk about chapter 22, but I believe we did. I mean,
Yeah, y'all said y'all did, so I guess I wasn't here.
the recap of 22. I think we covered it. It was some good tidbits in 22. Talked about the altar that it was built across the water, which some of Israel found offensive, and some said, "Hey, let's go get the troops up." I believe, and after they said, "Let's get the troops up," they got over there and they realized, "Hey, this isn't offensive. This is just a remembrance, so that when the generations and generations and generations to come, they got a set of stones over here." And we talked about how it became problematic for as we study our scripture, we saw that the divide of the 2.5 tribes being on the other side of the river, and it eventually led to some kingdom disputes later on down the line as they adopted a king over a god, which is still a strange thing to me, but it's a reason for that too. Everything in the scriptures has its reason, and it is all connected. And as I was studying today, putting all the notes in final form, came across a whole lot of other tidbits, little things that I can share, that I would like to share. So without further ado, are there any questions about the chapters that we covered before? I know we covered up 22 chapters. We got 23, 24. It's like, now we got to get this meat off the bone. And when you get down to the last little bit of the meal, those last couple pieces, is normally when you're like, man, I'm running out, but it's really good. You start to savor it, the flavor, the taste of it. Am I lying right there? People the chef in the house, she said, you know it, right? You've seen it. You've seen the look on people's faces as they work their way down to that last little bite. And it's almost a bittersweet. Kind of like when the angel told John to put the word in his mouth in Revelation. He said, it's going to be sweet going in, but it's going to be bitter. So that bittersweet, that understanding of as you digest it, it's coming to an end. As we see it, it's coming to them, but not really. Because when you look at the book of Joshua and you think of it coming to an end, I think as we start to see, we'll see that this was really the whole story of the Bible, in the Bible. And the Bible itself could be another story, and it just keeps expanding the more you expand your knowledge and learn. It doesn't stop. It just continues to grow. When we hear, actually, it was the scripture for today, my daily scripture on Bible.com. And I really like that app because, one, it gets me reading my Bible daily, but it also gave me something that made me, one, think of you. I mean, I've been thinking of y'all since 8 o'clock this morning. So don't find me strange. It wasn't anything like that, but y'all definitely was on my mind, because anytime I come to teach, I'm always in a learning mode myself. And I was thinking, like, that's kind of strange. Most people don't want to learn from somebody that's supposed to teach, but then they learn themselves. And the scripture actually came and helped me out today. It says, the generous, this is from Proverbs 11:25. The generous being is enriched, and he who watered is also watered himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's powerful. Like, that one scripture right there really motivated me even more. First, I had you on my mind, but it just motivated me more, knowing that as I get to share this water, because that's what me and my friend call it when we talk about scriptures, as I get to share this water, I'm also, not drying up myself. So without further ado, chapter 23, we start off. Israel is finally got its rest. And I'm gonna play it close to the scriptures today because it's a lot to cover in these last 2 chapters. So Israel is they're all done. All the enemies are done around them. All the land has finally been divided up. And now Joshua has to do the hard work. And the hard work is getting the people together and giving them that final understanding. You know, when you complete a mission, everybody says, "Oh yeah, the mission is over," until you go into that final mission brief. And you're like, "Well, we won the fight. What's to talk about?" Well, we got to lay down some ground rules for when we go home. When everybody go back into their house, we got to make sure that what's said and what was learned out here sticks. Because if it don't stick, it's dire consequences. You know, the war will keep continuing if y'all don't pay attention to these rules. So Josh was saying, y'all have rest. And it always, anytime I hear the word rest, or, you know, when we hear the word rest in the Bible, it makes me think, it makes me reflect, what is rest? Like, because everybody wants rest. You know, I talk to people, say, "Hey, you got rest?" "Yeah, I slept 8 hours last night." That's not rest. And every time I look in the scriptures and when we talk about rest, I keep coming back to the same conclusion. So I'm gonna ask y'all, what is rest? What do y'all think rest is? Maybe I like mine. Contentment. What else? I'm just going around the room. Completeness. Completeness. Finished. Completion. All right. My studies has led me, rest is peace. Nothing, and how it might be contentment, it might be completeness. It's whatever that peace is. And when God is telling y'all have rest, they have peace. Joshua is reiterating the words that God is telling him. You have peace. It is important to understand that with this peace comes something. The peace is free, but you are the only one that can interrupt your peace. And here's why I need to lay these rules down. So before laying the rules down, Joshua had to gather up the team. And as he was gathering up the team, he said, "Hey, bring me all the elders, all the tribal leaders, and the judges." And as we learn back in Deuteronomy, we know that judges were assigned, magistrates. And I always like to clarify when we see one word, but we also know it somewhere else as a book, the book of Judges. And when people say, "Well, the judges, are they the judges?" Though that type of judge was there to judge Israel. So when you hear the judges in the book of Judges, it's two different terms. These were people that they were using, considered like magistrates, to oversee the problems. The judges in the book of Judges were just overseeing the fate of the nation of Israel. So he called all the judges. And as he was calling them, he said, "Hey," set them down and told them, "Y'all seen what actually happened." He said, "Y'all seen the battles that we won across the river and on this side of the river. Y'all saw everything that took place, and we did not do it. It was God. It was God who led us to this side of the river. It was God who pushed us. It was God who was fighting for us." He also reminded them of where they came from prior to the fight. So in this recap, Joshua not only said, "Let me tell you that we have rest, but let me tell you how we got to rest." And us as believers, sometimes we don't look at our past as what brings us to that rest. We kind of just say, "Hey, we got here." And I was talking to one of my friends, and we were actually talking about how we understand that we are no longer our past, but it's what got us to that rest. And we have to remember that comes from Jesus Christ. And it led me to some scriptures. So when we talk about rest, can somebody go to Matthew 11:28? Kind of backtracking here for the rest part. I know. I thought you going for it, Kim. 11:28. 11:28.
Okay, I'm doing paper, he's doing electronic, he's faster.
But
There you go.
Please.
Read out the NASB.
what verse was it again?
28, Matthew 11:28. Says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest."
I mean, that was Jesus' call to rest. The beauty of what Israel has transpired is it's already done. Their rest is done. It's no coming to us. So when we think of the rest that we hear in the New Testament, it's being brought to us. It's come on to me. It's free, just like it was given to them, even though they had the battles and the conflicts behind them. The same way we have those battles and conflicts behind us. And that same rest is available. But I wanted to point out that scripture. All right, so while he was talking to them, he said, look, these are the things that happened. This is all the wars, the battles we fought. This is where God brought us from. And he actually took it all the way back to Egypt. He didn't want to let them know about, like, hey, we just came out here on a battlefield and everything was easy. No, this is a recap from when we set foot from there onto here. Pharaoh, Amorites, we crossed over, all of the kings, everything. We had them with no roadblocks in the way of battle. We won it all because of God. We know that God was in the battle with Joshua, stopped the sun and the moon, and was throwing hailstorms down on them. So we know that they weren't doing that, and they were winning the wars. And that's what we said. God did all the heavy lifting. Remember that. This isn't a victory of yours. This rest isn't something that you truly can own. It was given to you. But he said, I'll overcome them. If you don't, then there is the other end of that. Everything that you have been given can be put in jeopardy to be lost. It can be taken away, destroyed, because now you have went on the opposite side. Basically, you've joined the enemy. And this was very heavy when that reminder. It wasn't just so much of the battles. It was also, don't worship the idols that were destroyed in the process. You've won, you fought, God did it. Don't turn. And I had a conversation with one of my family members and said, hey, you know, what fight are we talking about? Because she watched it on YouTube, and she said, what fight were we talking about? And I was like, you know, it's two fights, one on one side of the river, one on the other. And on the other side of the river, they were supposed to destroy everything too, which made the question say, well, how are these idols there? Because it's still in the land. That land on the other side of the river wasn't the promised land. Everything across the river was annihilated. So I was saying, don't bring those ways in there. So made me scratch my head. Was that message to the 2.5 tribes that were sitting on the other side of the river?
To all of them.
To all of them. It wasn't a singular message. It was something that, even though it didn't exist, it still had to be reiterated, because it was something that their past forefathers had did. Actually talked about Abraham's dad and what he did. Why Abraham fled into the land that they're in now, because Abraham didn't want to follow his father. His father worshipped idols.
Right.
So he said, hey, I'll give you this land. He was faithful. And God gave him the land, and he promised to fill it with his children, which is this what we see, his offspring. All right. So afterwards, Joshua reminded him, he said, hey, we fought, we battled. Everything is pretty much done. We've got our rest. Keep the laws of Moses. And here's why. Because I told you so. No, it's because
Well, the reason he did tell him so. But you have to remember that what verse 11 says, so take care for yourself that you love the Lord your God. Okay. And so that's why he had to go. They went back through the first half of 23. They're going through all this right here. Then he's going to tell them what happens if you don't. Go ahead.
In 23:7, after he said, keep all the laws, he said, so as not to go among these nations who remain among you and make mention of the names of their
gods.
Right. Nor swear by them, nor serve them. So that reminder, that reiteration of keeping that law is saying, not only remember what I've done, not only remember what not to do, remember the laws that I can, but not so you don't fall into fault against God. No, this is Joshua addressing the kings and the judges. He hasn't got to all of the people, the entire nation, because he does it again later on, a second time. So this is him talking to the leadership. And anytime you do any type of business meeting, you bring your leadership in first, because if your leadership is jacked up and your leadership giving you bad gouge, then what happens to the people?
They get worse gouge.
They get worse gouge. Now, I always tell this story because it's one of the ones that, you know, as I was in the military, this was one of my defiant moments. And it was for, I felt like it was for a right reason, but, you know, everything I did wasn't always the best. I had this, I was probably a young E3, that's bottom of the, but low hanging fruit on a food chain in the military. And we had a run coming up. So the CO all the way in the back. Now, I heard what the CO said. Now, this is why you shouldn't always be in the office. The CO said the run is going to step off at 7 o'clock. Okay, run stepping off at 7 o'clock. Sounds good to me. I live in the barracks. 6:58, come outside for the run, ready to go. All I gotta do is make sure I'm there. But then the first class come out. That's the chief tells the first class that comes in. First class comes out and he said, hey, we need everybody there and a run at 7 o'clock, at 6 o'clock. Now he tell the E5s. And the E5s come out. And E5 said, we need everybody there at 5:30. Well, then they pass the message to the E4s. E4s come out. Now, what happens when you give a message of importance to a group of people that really doesn't understand that message? They don't understand childcare. They don't understand people who live off base. They don't understand people, whatever's the situation. The E4s come out and they address the audience and they say, everybody need to be here at 4 in the morning. Now, with the information being in the room, what do you think I said? Well, I know the run don't take off.
7 o'clock.
The run don't take, but
Why it gotta be the 3 hours early?
and you asked that question, but I was wrong because guess what? Leadership said to be
Be
there.
there. They were ensuring that you would be there.
Right. Even though I was right, even though the time had somehow dwindled, I wasn't where I was supposed to be. But if they would have just came out and said with the leadership, the proper information and passed it, do you think a lot of problems could have been averted? A lot of the woes that people run into trying to get somewhere. So that's why it was important for Joshua to gather up the leadership. The leadership has to be on the same page as where the message is coming from. And we all know that the message comes from one place. I don't care what time it was you got.
No, as you said at the message, and if you look at verse 6, that's where the message was coming from when it's in verse 6. Be very determined that you to keep and do everything that's written in the book of law of Moses, so that you will not turn aside from it to the right or left.
To the right or left. Now, we do know that he was addressing Israel.
Right.
All right. So as he's addressing Israel, he gives them a reminder, he tells them things, and he also tells them you're on your own. But then he also reminds them, I'm dying. Like Joshua, after seeing Joshua battle and do all this, I said, I'm dying. Like it says, and it came, hold on, I had it marked, but I like the way that they said it.
I'm old and advanced in years.
I'm old and advanced in years. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who's old and advanced in years, but Joshua knew that this was a message as I'm getting ready to leave. This is something that's important. Y'all might see me make a couple stars here tonight. That's something that's important. I'm leaving.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Verse 14, and see now, and I'm reading from the scriptures, and see now, this day I'm going the way of all the earth, and you know in all your hearts and all your beings that not one word has failed of all the good which the Lord your God spoke concerning you. All of it has come to you, and not one word has failed. Not one. Everything I said since Egypt, even stuff that Moses passed to me before he died, everything since Egypt. And Moses gave him a similar warning, right?
Mhm.
Before he died. It's funny that leadership is always leaving with a solemn message before leaving the room.
One of the things that's important about that is they just didn't have head knowledge. It's something they knew within their heart.
Yes.
And so, I mean, they embraced it. It was not wishy-washy. They know for a fact that happened. You can't nobody take that from them. If you just know it here, you can change your mind. But they was in a situation where they knew within the core of their being, they know who you did.
And see, that's why it's important for Moses to do what he did, directed by God, and Joshua to do what he did, directed by God, because now they have accomplished what's going on. They're in the promised land, and like you said again, here's your rest is coming. Whatever you have already achieved is yours.
And the thing about this is, you know, and I gave the example of military leadership and how it trickles down. And I laugh and I joke and we talk about the military, but that structure works. It doesn't fail. Obviously, they've been doing what they need to do for a really long time.
Yes.
It works. But I also see how as things trickle down, you get multiple leaders. You know, just like we see there's multiple leaders, and it could be problematic. We saw that, you know, when we started to get into the different books, the kings, the judges, so forth and so on. We see how that became problematic for Israel. But the number one thing is it's always between the word and the messenger. It's always one. It's always one. Now, it might be multiple ones going at several times, but they're all saying the same message. You know, in my studies of Revelations, you know, you go back and it brings you back to the different times where, you know, the different prophets were all preaching at the same time, but they all were saying the same message. Get it together, Israel. Get it together, Israel. Not one was over here was saying, get it together, Israel. And the other one was saying, you know, Israel, you slightly okay. No, they were all saying the same thing. The message was consistent because the message was coming from a source that did not need to be deviated because it was life. So the same way that Israel was getting his message from, the same way Joshua was getting his message from God is the same way it keeps coming. You get that message, you hear that message, you do it. What happens is when that message becomes diluted and everybody starts to say, well, Joshua said worship him sometimes. Well, you know, this tribe said that Joshua said, and that's what that, as you read that, you start to reflect a little bit why they marched so heavy on the 2.5 tribes. Because even before Joshua said it, it was already known. If we start a divide and you start worshiping here and worshiping here, we are problematic. Now, so after that, he tells them you're on your own. He says, I'm dying. He reminds them, all came to pass. Now, there are people who will say, hey, some of these things we're still waiting for. Israel got everything that God promised right there. And that verse solidified everything that he was given to Israel. The only thing left now is if you go to the left or to the right. That's the remaining stuff you're going to get from that promise, which has been proven throughout the scriptures.
Well, like you said, they've been given everything they were promised, but yet they didn't collect everything. The promise was that where your feet touch, where the sole of your feet touch is yours. Okay, is yours. Okay,
A continuing promise.
A continuous promise.
Just like the other part is a continuous promise. And well, you know, we hear them as curses. Yeah, they are curses, but a curse could be a promise too. If you don't do what you're supposed to, I promise I'm gonna give you it. You know, and I laugh and I joke because as a kid, my mom used to always tell me, this is not a threat, it's a promise. And you notice how everybody has heard that? Because I used to say, well, just threaten me then. Because I know you, Mom, and I love you to death, and I know you keep your promises. You know, that's the thing. So most people just view that what Joshua was saying, oh, it's just a threat. No,
this is promises.
It's a promise, you know. And so after that, he said, all has come to pass. And and if you notice, I got there, it says, you take the good with the bad. Because as they were hearing this, they heard all the good. Man, you know, I sometimes joke, you know, when I tell people about taking the good with the bad, I said, hey, you know, and this might be good for you going out. You know, hey, I'm going to the military. Yeah, I get, you know, paid 2 times a month, eat, sleep, food, proper rest. But here's the things they don't tell you. Well, you got to go and watch. You got to go on deployment. You got to do this. You got to do that. All these other things that compile on top of that. And all you thinking is, man, I got suckered. No, you didn't. You take the good with the bad. What you do leads to more good. If you go in there and mess up, it leads to more bad. Trust me, I know.
You've been on both sides.
I've been on both sides. I've been on both sides. And then he gave him the final warning. He didn't just say, you're going to take the good and the bad. He said, if you take the bad, you're going to perish. Now, the word perish, you know, we hear it sometimes, and it really, you don't really understand like what perish is. You know, perish, oh, I'm gonna die. No. Perish means to be removed from existence, to dissolve away. Poof, to perish. Now we say, well, we know that when you die, you know, it says to perish. You know, if you die, you perish. We associate it with death. But those that perish, right? Because Jesus said that if you accept him, you will not perish, which means that you will not go into non-existence, and that non-existence is eternal torture. Yeah, that's perishing. That's every day going through, never getting out. That's the worst of the worst. So when we hear perish, the Israelites understood what perishing means. You up out of there for good. You're away from the source. You're gone. No more chance, no nothing. So, and not only did he say they was going to perish, he actually put an exclamation on how fast they would perish.
Quickly.
Quickly. Quickly is fast. In fact, when people talk about quickly, it's actually faster than fast. When somebody say, hey, run fast, oh man, that's at your speed. That's at, hey, because fast in here is different for everybody. And we were all to go run, and I said, everybody run as fast as you can. Everybody would have a different speed. Now, if I say run quickly, I anticipate that everybody is going to move at the same pace because it's something that needs to be accomplished in a timely manner. So when God said you're going to perish and it's going to be quick, it's not going to be slow. In fact, I think it's like, and a lot of stuff is mixed in my studies in Revelations. He was actually talking about how Babylon's going to fall within 1 hour. Now we know that our time isn't his time, but that's still pretty fast. That's fast. I wouldn't even want to be partial anywhere near that hour. And a good thing I won't be. All right. So, totally gonna pass. Now, in chapter 24, we kind of see, I got up there, same new agreement. Same new agreement. It's like an oxymoron. How do you have the same new agreement? Because a lot of these people did not, first, we know way back in earlier chapters, they had to make a covenant. They had to be circumcised because they weren't. So you would have thought that agreement was made. But this one right here is the etched in stone. Now, I got a little fun fact in my studies. It's going to lead us a little bit around. Oh man, don't do this to me today. That's the thing about technology.
Mm-hmm.
It'll fail you when you need it the most. All right, that's why I write stuff down too. Aha! But I'm gonna keep trying because that has some good tidbits in there that I would like to share if I can get it pulled up. Oh, you just want to act ugly today, huh? Super ugly. Don't worry about it. That's how you end up on eBay. All right. So the mountain where they're making the covenant at, that's a very important place. So this particular mountain, Shechem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also known as back shoulder, son of Harmon, the chieftain of the Hivites of Shechem at the time of Jacob's arrival. Very, 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 very interested. Jacob was here. Years and years and years and years and years, a lot of years ago, Jacob was here. Now we all know who Jacob is, right? Not Joshua, but Jacob. And it's the city where Manassas is located, in a valley between Mount Elbab and Mount Gerizim, 34 miles in kilometer north of Jerusalem, and 7 miles and Jerusalem and 7 miles away. All right. Now, what's beautiful about that is this particular place, somebody else visited or in that area. And remember, I don't know who was here earlier when we were talking about like interesting facts. If we go to John, the book of John, I'm gonna come back to that. That's why I got multiple devices here, because I can keep one book open while going to another. I guess technology ain't half bad. So we go to the book of John and go to chapter 4 of the book of John. There's a woman at a well. And I believe it's chapter 4. This is why I was saying that all this stuff ties in. It just gets, the picture just gets better. It's like, if you think it can't get no better, it does. And I say that because I like art. And I watch the artists paint pictures, and it starts off, some of them, we got ones out there on social media now where they'll throw buckets and buckets of paint over there, and then they'll come by and touch it in one place. And next thing you know, you're like, man, what are you doing? I can't get no better than that. I can't look at it. And it just keeps getting better. The art just keeps getting better. That's the scriptures in my mind. The more I look at them, the better the picture gets. So this woman at the well, right?
Mhm.
But let's backtrack. Jesus was traveling. Where was Jesus traveling from? He was traveling to Galilee. And we know that in Galilee, there were some refuge cities. And we know that while Jesus was traveling, he was going to these different places. But in the middle of between there and there, between that, and I gave you all the mileage of the distance. So in between that walk somewhere, he came across a woman who was drawing water from a well.
Mm-hmm.
And that well was on a mountain. And that mountain was talked about here. So they kept these traditions forever. It didn't change. Now, it's even more stuff that happens at this well that has some interesting things. Now, when you study, as you were studying, you saw that Jacob said perfection and truth. Right? He mentioned perfection and truth. Chapter 14 of 24. I know we ain't got that far yet, but he mentioned perfection and
I
truth.
mean, verse 14.
Verse 14, I'm sorry. Verse 14. Perfection and truth.
Joshua mentions that. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
All right. Now, perfection, and these are very loose terms. What's perfect? We know that none of us is perfect. We know we don't possess perfect, but the only thing that we would have that would be perfect is our being, our spirit, because that is given to us by God. So that would be perfection. Can we, as they say in the thing, slap the table that we agree that it's from God, and that would be perfection. All right, we slap the table and agree on that. So let's go to John. Same chapter. What did he tell? What did Jesus tell the woman? Everlasting water. What else?
You talking verse 20?
What did it say?
Jerusalem in his mouth.
Yeah. Talk about the distance, but he also told her how and what way they were worshiping.
Spirit and truth.
Spirit and truth. And we all agree that spirit is perfection. And we know that we don't have that perfection of our own. We have the being in us because we all have received that being from God. But that perfection, true. So Joshua's even giving that same message. I'm big on symbolism. I'm big on seeing not to overreach, not to try and find, not to make it up. And oh man, that's where I thought I really like to see Christ in every verse of the scripture. I like it. It brings me joy to know that Jesus is throughout the whole Bible before we get to the Gospels. That's just the physical manifestation that John talks about. When he tells her, hey, he had to come physically, pitch his tent with us, but he's been there the entire time. With Joshua, remember who's telling Joshua this stuff? The word is coming to Joshua.
Mhm.
So he's been there the entire time. This is, huh?
The host. They seen with the sword.
Right.
So he's been there the whole time. He's not new. And I like to do that when people, hover around the Old Testament. I say, you believe in Jesus? Oh, stop. He was in the Old Testament. Isaiah talked about him. Everybody speaks of him in a way, but he was there. He was there with Joshua as well. Says you won't perish. All right. But now they got to update that paperwork. Now we know they didn't have paper, they had stones. So what did Joshua do? He gathered up everybody again. Now this time he gathered the same group, but he said, everyone needs to hear this. Now that's a lot of people. I mean, we talking about what's our numbers there? Don't you
going back and getting them?
730.
I bet you Joshua wished that he had an email at that time. Email, but it led me to think even more. We talk about Jesus, and I think I said this before, when Jesus was actually doing the sermons out there with preaching to all the people, he had his disciples and he had to place them. Now we see why he called the judges. Brief them first. So when they out there, hey, these are the things that's going to happen to you. So But now I'm going to call you again, but I'm going to call you with everybody, and I'm going to stage y'all throughout so y'all all can hear it. So this message is not missed by anyone, because this message isn't just hey, it's not spam mail. It's urgent mail. Urgent for us as a tribe, as a nation. So I say, hey, it's time time to repeat a little bit more of things that happen. Because anytime that in the scriptures we see that something is getting ready to take place, God definitely reminds them of where he brought them from. Not out of arrogance, but just to show you that I've carried you the whole entire time. You don't have to worry. You can trust me more than you trust your next breath. I got you covered. Okay. And that's why I put up there. I had you covered. God, you know how when people write stuff and they quote other people and he had them covered the entire time. Nothing failed. We learned that back there. Everything came to perish. So Joshua was reminding the people of this, told them of all the conquests. Here's a history lesson. Here's everything they did. But once again, don't repeat past mistakes, because past mistakes lead to death, leads to perishing. You know, perishables. That word perishing is just, every time now I hear it, oh man, gather up your perishables. Because once a can of corn is gone, it's gone. It's gone. So it's perishables, you know, things that will go to waste, dissolve unto nothing. That goes bad. I don't want to go bad. You know, I like my shelf life in eternity. That's why I chose. You know, everybody has that, what they say, expiration date on the carton. Well, when my carton was being made in the foundation, this one ain't set to expire. Put it on the shelf. I said, hey, look at me. I never go bad. Don't nobody ever pick me up to buy from me. I'm never going bad. So yes, no, I'm not a perishable. That's a beautiful thing. I might write that down. I am not a perishable. Put that somewhere. All right. God told him he had him covered. But here's the thing. Just like any agreement, after Joshua ran it all down to them, he said, and 14 to 28, because we leave in 13. Any questions about that? I know I'm rolling. All right. So in 14 to 28, say, here's the terms, your choice. Pick a plan. You know, like when you walk in to get a new cell phone and a guy comes out and he got the, oh, hey man, I got this beautiful phone. You're like, yeah, that's an amazing phone. It's the iPhone 36 and it's the best phone in the world. And he said, yeah. And you look at it, you're like, man, I'm scrolling. I'm gonna have so much fun with this. And he said, now what's your plan? Now, I know nowadays, as most things, we don't have the problem of planning. You know, that's some of the beauty of time, you know, pushing forward. Everybody in here has phones that has a service that you can make a phone call anytime. But I, like most, remember a time where you couldn't call me until after 9 o'clock because my plan didn't warrant it. I had to get a Philadelphia phone number, even though I spent 17 years here in North Carolina, because guess what? Long distance calls still make. So Joshua gave them a plan of infinite minutes, infinite time, day, night, whatever. And then he told them the opposite plan. He said, if you pick this plan, you're going to have a whole lot of problems with your service. Not only are you going to have problems with your service, you're going to perish with your service. So he explained that all to him. And as he said, can somebody go to Hebrews 3:9? Because he told him, he said, this plan, you need to choose right now.
Hebrews 3:9. 3:9. Where your fathers tried me by testing me and saw my works for 40 years. 3:29.
3:29. I said 3. No, 3 times. He reminded him, hey, look, don't. When y'all pick this plan, just remember what happened. Your dad, your fathers, they tested me. This was a reminder of what happened in the desert, right? But Hebrews 12 gives a little bit more. Roman charges, little bro. All right, look, I don't want them type of Roman charges.
Verse 12 or Hebrews 12?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. It should have been 9:2:12.
9:2:12.
Or 3:2:9. I'm all over the place.
Chapter 3 or chapter 9?
Chapter 3,
Okay.
9, and I'll take 12. I'll take it from here. You read 9, I got it from the rest of the way. And I say this because in Hebrews, it was supposed to be 3 to 9. When we look at what Hebrews is talking about, it's kind of like right there. It wasn't a time where you could say, well, you know what, I'm gonna see how God works out. I'm gonna see how this pans out for me, Joshua. I don't know. So Hebrews, and I went to Hebrews for a particular reason, is because when Paul was telling the Hebrews, he was saying that it's not every day. You have today. This is today. And that's the message that Joshua was giving him, that given Israel. You have today to pick this plan. And we think all the time like, oh man, you know, the Israelites, they went to tarry 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years and we still good. No, they had that day to choose. And then they're choosing, they made a declaration of faith. They say, hey, we want it. We want the God plan. That's the best plan out there. We've seen them win. We've seen them conquest. We want the God plan. So he gave him another one. So I warn you one more time. Here's more warnings that if you do anything against the plan that you said you declared and willing to do, it's going to be problems. And they replied again. And they said, we obey his voice. But look, us having hindsight, having a whole story, at that point, Israel was good. At that point, they was ready to go. I probably would have been in the crowd. Israel like, yeah, you know, I'm all the way in the back. That was because I'm in the back, and I get one of the probably wouldn't even go into the judges. It would have been like some guy who worked at the market who would have been standing there telling me, he'd be like, hey man, you heard everything? I'm like, not really. He'd be like, all right, break it down for me one time. I'd be like, yeah, that's good, man. We like this plan. Go ahead and send it forward. All right. Pass the message back up. The plan is good. All right. I'll obey his voice. And as soon as now we had, like I said, hindsight, everybody in this room, if we were there, hindsight tells us the story will say that we all said we obey. But we all know going forward that wasn't the truth. We had some problems. We had some issues going into that land. We saw that people started to go to idol worshiping. We saw that all the different problems, but shoot, we didn't even have to wait a whole nother book. It was the very next book. The guy said,
They hadn't even throw the dirt on Joshua yet.
right. Joshua was still, you know, fresh in his grave. And Joshua was looking down, was like, I just left them guys. It wasn't even been that long. So he told him pick up,
Neither one of them was a good plan.
Again, this is hindsight. But at that time, just like at the time when I picked my cell phone back in the day, and they said, hey, you can get anytime minutes starting at 7 o'clock. That's a great plan. It sounds good. But now that we got phones that I could call anytime, update data, whatever, you think I would take that plan? Of course not. But we had to see a better plan come to understand the old plan wasn't good. I think one of the apostles said that same exact thing. That if the old plan was good, I wouldn't have had to have a new plan. I'm just saying the Bible is, like I said, somebody painting a picture. Now, the more you look at it, the better it gets. But imagine now, I had a guy who I was leaving Japan, and you know, when you leave, everybody kind of like do certain things. And I had a shishi dao, scrolled out. A shishi dao is like it's like one of them things, and it's a scroll, and they open it up, and everybody was signing, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, man. This guy drew a picture on there, and it was a nice picture. And I said, man, why you draw that picture? He said, don't worry about it. I said, it's a nice picture, but he said, don't worry about it. He said, when you get home, take a look at the picture. I said, I'm looking at it right now. He said, when you get home, take a look at the picture. So I got home at the picture, and I looked at it, and I said, it still looked the same. And I kind of turned, and a light shined on it. It was a completely different picture. So me, like in art, now I know that sometimes the art you see in front of your face has even something better when the light shine on it. So Joshua was given a plan, but we know that plan got better when the light shined on it. That's just my understanding of it. All right, so here we go, Joshua again now. Joshua is 110 years old. Well, that's when he died. So let's say he's in his 90s, because we don't know how much time span, but we know that he died at 110. But Joshua was still getting large stones. Because when he was getting everything, Joshua said, man, it's the word. Put the law of Moses right here. Y'all said you'll obey. I'm gonna get these large stones. And he got those large stones. And he said, all right, this large stone had all the laws of Moses on it. Put it in a tree. Said, this right here is y'all declaration, what y'all said y'all was going to do. Now, we know things about stones, right? It's a large stone. It has the laws of Moses on it, which laid me down a line of detours. Well, not a detour, a good detour. So Psalms, I'm gonna do this that way I don't mess nobody else up. Well, I tell you, I be talking fast. Y'all don't slow me down. I was one of them kids that ran quickly. Psalms 118:22. Now that's very specific. Because we know that right here, they had to make an agreement, right? Something had to be agreed upon. Okay. Now we know Psalms is later on down the line. And Psalms 118:22, it says, the stone which the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone. It's always been the chief cornerstone. But they picked that plan, which means over time they rejected it. Well, why is that important? Well, Isaiah 28:16. Thus said the Lord God, see, I'm laying in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a settled foundation, who trust shall not hasten away. So we're still talking about this stone, but they had stones. Something had to go away for something to come. So that plan that they had, something happened. Because if that was the stone right there that everybody agreed upon, generations, you shouldn't have to have a new stone, right? Somebody had to reject that stone. Well, I mean, Matthews, we know what Matthews say, right? Matthews 21:42. And Jesus said to them, did you ever read the scriptures? The stone which the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was from God and is marvelous in your eyes. Now, you know, he was talking to the people. He was telling them this. He was basically saying, I'm that stone. Because prior to, they were saying the law of Moses, the law of Moses, the law of Moses. And he's like, that's me. I'm that. I'm that cornerstone that was buried so long ago. That was the law of Moses that you guys rejected. So I'm here now. But if you don't want to see that, I'll just go. You know, let me do my father's business, and I'm gonna go ahead and take off. Kind of like what Joshua was saying, right? Man, let me put another star there. I like my stars. They kind of mean it like things are really connecting in multiple places. This story is being told there and here. And we know that God operates outside of time. And when he gives you his word and it's so uplifting, it's almost like you don't get to operate outside of time, but you get that feeling, hey man, I ain't talking about being, the word of God is really there. Like people say, hey, you've been to Jerusalem? Yeah, I have. You been to Galilee? Yeah, I have. No, I mean, you ain't never traveled nowhere. I said, I've been there. Because that's for me. And lastly, Luke. Oh, wait, I missed one. How did I miss Zechariah? Because Zechariah even to me, and it's important to see that it was 10:4. 10:4, good buddy. For him, the cornerstone, from him, the tent peg, from him, the battle bow, from him, the battle bow, from him, every ruler together. Man, seems like we're talking about somebody, right? Okay. And then we know Luke 24:44. And he said to them, these are the words which I spoke while I was with you, that, did I get that right? All have to be filled that was written in the law of Moses and the prophets and I tell him I have to switch this. And the Psalms concerning me. So we're talking about Moses, the laws, the hymns, the Psalms, everything. This is all concerning me. Oh. So somebody tell me that they wasn't talking about Jesus. They've been talking about, you know how they say, hey man, you know, they talking about, man, they talked about Jesus. My mom used to always say that one too. Don't worry about it, baby. They talked about Jesus. When somebody say something bad about you, hey, now I'm gonna start looking at, that was good, something good. So keep talking about me. Keep saying good things about me, bad things too. I don't mind. All right, so Joshua put that large stone down. After he pushed the large stone down, he told them, now go home. I'm done. I'm tired. I'm old. I've won battles. And I've done all I could. I'm done. And Joshua's called a servant in there. You know, we know that he's certain areas related to as a prophet. But Joshua was a servant. He served Israel. I mean, he served Israel. And that's where the recap gonna come in, because we're gonna talk all about all the things just quickly that Joshua did and the people did and the things we may have missed and kind of didn't see some of the beauty in it, that art that's hidden, you don't get really to see until somebody hold the light up to it. And Joshua's a servant. And we know the scriptures say, my good and faithful servant. Now we know who they was talking about. But Joshua did his job. And that's all when it really boils down to it. That's what God is asking. The job that we said we will obey, the voice that we hear, the battles are behind us, and we believe we have rest. Like, this is all scriptures that is preached about in the gospel from the mouth of Jesus Christ. He was saying all of this to them people. He's saying all of this to us. So if somebody say, oh man, I really can't get the New Testament. I can't wrap my brain around it. I say, you like war stories? I sure do. I said, all right, read this war story. But every time you read it, think about something you couldn't understand in the previous. Oh, I get it. I see it. All the lights are coming on. You're like, man, I didn't notice all those here. Yeah, put them together. Oh, when you put them together, it's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Now, have you ever ate to try to eat peanut butter on a half of bread? It's a messy thing to do. And if you ever eat jelly on a half of bread, it's a messy thing to do. But you put that together, boy, and if you toast it, see, you got a out there. Toasted peanut butter and jelly sandwich, amazing. Try it out one day. But you put it together, man, that's that good. That's that good eating. So Joshua did his job. And as Joshua did his job, he remembered the things and the things that he was tasked to do. We got some bones that's been traveling with us. Let's put these bones to rest, because it was a promise that your bones won't rest in Egypt. Your bones will come with us all of these years. Now, I don't know why it took them 110 years, probably all the battles and stuff. They couldn't say, because they was in the land, but they brought them bones all the way with, and they laid those bones to rest. And Joshua, being that good, faithful servant, he went home. He did not, what's the word? Perish. Joshua went home. And along with Joshua, the priest went. Aaron's son. So as we close out Joshua, we saw his service. We saw God's treating of Israel. We saw God fulfilling promises. We saw a glimpse of the Messiah. We saw it all in one book. And I always tell people anytime I read something, I challenge you to go read the other ones, because they're just as beautiful. Man, they're all magnificent. So let's have a recap. Now, Andy had brought something up to me. And Andy told me something that blew my mind. It made me think. It actually made me think to a point where I had the map and looked it up. So if you don't mind sharing that with us, Andy.
And all eyes back to chapters 1, 2, and 6.
1, 2, and 6.
What's that again?
Chapters 1, 2, and 6.
Joshua.
First book.
Oh.
Okay.
First chapter. First chapter of Joshua.
And I've got some questions here. One of them, what I think is, I want to talk about rehab.
Okay.
Okay. Because I don't think you covered that well, and I think people overlook that. You know, to me, that's a story of compassion, love, trust, God's strength, and belief.
About Rahab, right?
Yes. Okay, and my first question is, what was the spy's name?
I don't know. Just say they sent 2 spies. I don't remember.
I've got 2 Bibles here, and it's not in my Bibles. Okay, and if you look at 2:1 and 6:23, they're just referred to as spies, isn't it? Okay, it doesn't give a name. Okay, so who made the promise to Rehab though?
I did.
Okay. Who made the promise?
This is the two spies though.
It was the two
Okay.
spies.
They spoke to her,
Mhm.
but it was, you know, Andy, and that's a beautiful point, because how can they promise something that they don't have the power to promise? And I see, I see what you're saying. God made that promise.
And now where was their house?
Yeah, it was by the wall, but, now, if you're talking about the promise though.
Mhm.
There's something you said after that. What'd you say after
He said the two spies made the promise,
that? Right.
and they didn't have, their names were not located anywhere in
Right.
scripture.
So
Which
my
she-
point on that is this was just two normal everyday Israelites. This wasn't a priest or anybody with any power, you know, just a guy like me. Made a promise to her that her and her family would not be harmed. Okay, and I'm gonna get to that point here in a minute where that's important.
Okay.
But her house was on the wall. Okay, and it was on the outside wall. Okay, if you look at 2:6 and 2:15.
Mhm.
Okay, and she was drying flax or grain on her roof where she hid the two spies. Now, here's where I'm gonna get about the problems two spies made. Who honored that promise?
God honored it through the fighting in Joshua.
Yeah.
And the Bible also said, those who bless you, I will bless.
Mhm.
Those who curse you, I will curse. And they definitely was blessed by her hiding there.
Mhm.
And so God saved their lives.
Yeah, God honored that promise.
Mhm.
Okay. The thing I really got me on this was, the walls fell flat, according to the King James Version. But her house was on the wall,
Mhm.
okay? But that section of the wall didn't fall down.
Mhm.
Okay, because if you look at 6:22. Joshua tells the two spies to go get her and her family from her house.
Mhm.
Okay. And that number I called out earlier, 601,730, that's not including the Levites.
No.
So that's how many people were marching around Jericho at the time. Okay, there was a lot of wall to fall down. And Rehab believed in the Israelite gods. Okay, and if you read 2:11, you'll see that she says that your God is the God of heaven and of earth.
She made a declaration.
And that's a good point you brought up, especially talking about Rahab, because we'll read the story, just clean right over it. Then we get to Jesus' ancestors in
Mhm.
Matthew, and we see her there. And those things seem like they panned out, they sent the reconnaissance team out and they just happened to run into this woman. It seemed like that kind of story, and God saved it. But looking at the sovereignty of God in the Old Testament, Rahab was not by incident in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Back then, or before then, God knew that she was going to be one of the ancestors of his son coming down through lineage, that she was going to be, it would be the royal line through Joseph. And so God preserved her. It seemingly would be because, if you just read the story in its flat sense, because she did what she did. But God preserved her because of his sovereign choice in the genealogy of his son. You see what I'm saying? So we read the story, it happened like it happened. Now, hindsight, you always say. We look at hindsight, God had by his providence designed that she would be saved, that she would bear descendants and marry whoever she married in the genealogy in the event that Jesus Christ would come through.
And it's beautiful you point out that because
That's a good point, yeah.
because the miracle of a wall falling and that structure sustaining. Can you imagine like the people in Jericho seeing everybody else walls falling down and crumble to annihilation, and they walk to the wall and they just look over and be like, man, we about to die. Why Rahab house not going down? Once again, those little miracles, when you hold them up to light, wow. You know, you just wow. And when we talked about that, I saw it, I was like, yeah, I get that. I understand it. And you explained it. We talked about it a little bit more. And it's those things, those little pieces, you know, when I like to talk about food because I like to eat. There's those little things on your plate. Did you say, man, you know, you look at, man, I still got a pea left over. Don't mix that with that mashed potatoes. So, you know, it's those things. They're not without nutrition. They're not without value. They're there for a reason. And I like when we're talking about Rahab, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but man, I can't wait to get to Ruth. Because I always tell people, I tell people, hey, Ruth was a Moabite.
Leave it alone.
Right. and that's that I can't wait. Like I'm chomping at the bits, waiting to eat. So that's the beauty of it. Now, and I remember when anything else, please, because this is the recap.
It's a good observation that he would hold on to that this long, you know, that he held on that for her, because she's gonna come up again. And, you know, when she come up, we're gonna remember this. We're gonna say the providence of God through his sovereign work saved Apollo at this point. She was not an incident that they went into her house. You know,
And see, like you said, it was the providence of God. That's why it's not important to know that, or him to name the spies.
The important is that he upheld the promise, sovereignly preserved, and Joshua held what God had made promise to.
Now, Rahab is that's a lesson for us because we got a promise
Mm-hmm.
that we will be preserved, not perish, but the opposite, preserved. Just like I said, you go in a grocery store and you see some milk and they tell you this milk will never expire or run out. I would look at that milk as we said, a miracle. But that's us, each one of us. That's us. Any other things for a recap? Because I got a few things. I want y'all to say them before I say them. I mean, I must have been a bad teacher. Ain't nobody hearing nothing I said. No, I'm just picking.
I made a comment about the choice they made coming at the end, and when you said you choose God of your forefathers, or the God of the Amorites. They had another choice. He was just giving them land needs before them, because that's what was gonna be before them seemingly. But he turned and said, I'm gonna fear the Lord. And that was the choice that they should make, you know, so.
And
Sometimes we
Joshua,
think we only got two choices now, we have more.
laid that out pretty clear. After he told them about that declaration, he said, I don't care what y'all do, but me and my house, this is what we're gonna do. This is the choice we're making. Now, it's like when you go in a store. If I went with my wife and I said, I'm gonna get this plan, and she said, well, I don't like that plan. And that's your choice. But when I'm up here talking to everybody on the phone all times of the hour, don't look at me. Don't look at my phone, because you had that same choice, you know, that I had. I know in the beginning, Amari started out with, remember how he started out with the name. And I always, like I said, when I look at the scriptures, I always think about how things are connected. You know, just his name, just Joshua. Now, Joshua's name was Joshua, but he was also Joshua, son of Nun. Now we know that we're not talking about none as in nothing or none. But if you go back and look at the word, that Nun, which is his family name, means prosperity or fish, but prosperity. And we know that Jesus didn't have a father, an earthly father, he had a heavenly father, which his father was at a prosperity. So even Joshua's name, when you start to really nibble at the meat, and like I said, I don't want to reach and oh man, this guy's really trying to pull something out. No, this is the things that are scriptural. When you go look it up, these are things that most people will look at and say, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with each other. Why was his name Joshua Nun? That just means that his dad was this and but no, that name means something. Joshua's name meant something. All of this is connected. The symbolism is there. The battles that we talked about, you can see those battles if you paint the pictures in your mind. You might see what's going to be happening during Revelation, but even amplified. That was a war. I don't want to be here when them saints come to marching. We here when the saints. Yeah, I don't want to be here because them saints coming to do some work.
Name just goes to show those people just didn't flippantly name their children.
No.
You know,
Jehovah
just like,
saves.
you Yeah, just like John was told Zechariah, name his son John. You know, he would name him Jesus. I mean, God was also Emmanuel. So these, when they named their children, they didn't just flippantly name children's names like, you know, we do today. They had a reason for naming them what they named.
And I did a study, and that's why I say I like the book of Joshua, because the book of Joshua was probably the first place that led me to do a full study on just the name. You know, we hear that it's God's salvation. If you walk it back, you know, you get
Say,
uh-huh.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, because
I thought it was Hosea.
who?
Joshua, was it Hosea?
It's so I'm trying to, I want to
Okay.
paint, I want to say it right because I don't like putting any misinformation out. So when you walk Joshua's name back, well, you walk Jesus' name back, it's the same term. It was spelled a little different. Like they would hyphenate it in certain places in the scriptures, but they had the same meaning when Jesus came. And as the Greek, Latin, they got it. It was Jesus. You go back, you heard the conquest. That's where we get the J from. But as you walk it back, you get to Yehoshua, right? And if you, which means God's salvation. But when you break that word down, it's El salvation. And when you go back, it goes even further, and it's the name that it was given to him, given in Moses. Now I know a lot of scriptures and translations, they just for all sorts of purposes, so that everyone will get the word. It was God. But when you dig in it, his name is God's, he who, and it's a long sentence when you put it all together. He who brought beings into being salvation. That's a powerful name. When back in the day they said that name is powerful, is because you had to make sure that when you named your kids that name, they knew it.
The name.
They lived, you had to live the attributes of their name. That's why Peter's name was Peter, because it was Kepha, which was stone. And as you see, Peter's demeanor was brick, solid, the older out of the group. So, yeah.
Change Jacob's name, huh?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Jacob, even Jacob's name was deceiver. And prior to, when you go back, I say trickster, and I said trickster, and I said, man, Jacob didn't seem like trickster. It was a deceiver, because everything Jacob did prior to getting sucker punched in the hip was deception. He deceived his brother.
His brother was too hungry, too stupid.
Now listen. Am I saying that the deception wasn't right or warranted? Hey, Jacob saw a sucker and he took it. But yet he paid for that with a limp.
Remember his mom had it.
She had a hand in it too.
She had a hand in
I wasn't gonna blame her, because at the end of the day, it's still with Jacob. Jacob said, "Yeah, I'm going in there. I'm getting these lentils." So names have meaning, and we learned that with Joshua. We learned that this conquest is symbolic in a lot of different places in the scriptures, Revelations to come. We learned that Joshua, his leaving, his done, saying that it is done. When he said that it's done, we heard that somewhere else down the line. It is finished. It is completed. We learned that as he continued to go, when he died, he told him, "I'm not gonna be here for long. I gotta go." The only thing he didn't say is, "Where I go, you can't follow," which they already knew that. So these are things, and that's why it's a striking question there that I lost, when the disciples say, "Hey, where you going?" "Yeah, where I'm going, you can't follow." "Oh man, you leaving us?" No. We see how the villages and the surrounding areas of where they started, when it's still places that Jesus was visiting, because that whole land had people there that needed that to be brought in. That message still resonates throughout the world. That whole land, which we know, I'm not talking about Jerusalem. I'm talking about everything is his. And what did it say? The earth is his and all that is. That's a lot. So that message is all. And even if we go, what is it? James said, is it James? "I don't want one to perish." Not one. So that message is, he's saying, just like Joshua, that message got to get out there, but you got to pick a plan. So it's so much symbolism just in this book. Same thing in Genesis and all the books prior to it going forward. I hope that I captured everything that I possibly could. I know I missed some things, and thank you for that Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful addition. Not that I missed it. It's just like in my life, I've always been taught that story, boom, a quick hit, and you just elevated something that you basically helped me put the peas into the mashed potatoes. And I thank you for it because I needed that nourishment. All right, any further questions? And this concludes the book of Joshua.